Welcome to RPM with Scott Hunter, revving up the renewal, purpose, and mission in your life, where we're all about living the gospel in real life through prayer, practice, and intentional growth. So let's dive into ways to deepen your faith, find your God-given purpose, and live out that mission. Let's get this journey started.
Let's start with a question. When you hear the word disciple, what comes to mind? For many of us, we think of a student, someone who is listening to a teacher or maybe takes notes in church or tries to live a good life. But when Jesus called people to follow him, he wasn't just inviting them to a classroom. He was calling them into something much deeper. The word we often translate as disciple in the Bible is the Greek word mathetes, which means learner or apprentice. And in Jesus' time, an apprentice wasn't just someone who learned from a distance. They walked with their teacher, watched him how he lived, and practiced what he showed them. That's what Jesus is inviting us into today. Not just to believe in him, but to follow him so closely that his way of life becomes our way of life. It forms us, who we are. So what I'd like to do is let's look at Matthew 4:19, where Jesus calls his first disciples. He says, "Come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Now, there's so much packed into this one sentence, right? First, Jesus says, "Come follow me." This isn't just about agreeing with his teaching. It's an invitation to relationship, to walk with him daily and learn from him. And then he says, "I will make you." That's such an important phrase that we need to grab a hold of. That's transformation. Jesus is saying, I'm going to shape you, change you, prepare you for something greater. And it really is greater than who we are. And finally, he says, fishers of men. That's mission. Jesus is saying, what I'm doing in you and where we're going to go, that's the heart of apprenticeship. Being with Jesus, being changed by Jesus, joining him in his work. I remember when I first started thinking about my own walk with Jesus as an apprenticeship, it changed everything. For years, I thought discipleship was mostly about learning, reading the Bible, taking notes, trying to apply what I've learned. And while that's part of it, I realized something was missing. It hit me when I read Luke 6:40. A student is not above the teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like their teacher. That's the goal, to be like Jesus. Not just to know what he knows, but to live like he lived, love like he loved, walk as he walked. And when I shift my mindset to apprenticeship, it made me ask different questions. Here's an analogy. Imagine someone who wants to be a chef. If all they did was read cookbooks and watch cooking shows, they might know a lot about food and a lot about cooking, but to spend time in the kitchen with a master chef, watching and practicing and making mistakes, that would be apprenticeship. Now, the Bible's full of examples of apprenticeship. When we think about in Jesus' time with his disciples, they ate together, they traveled together, they experienced life together. He didn't just teach them in a synagogue. He taught them along the path, along the road, every moment. One of my favorite examples is in John 13 when Jesus washes the disciples' feet. Afterward, he says, "I've set you an example that you should do as I have done with you." Jesus didn't just tell them to serve, he showed them how to serve. Now, another powerful moment is in Matthew 14 when Peter steps out of the boat to walk on water. He doesn't get it perfect. He starts to sink, but Jesus is right there to lift him up. And that's apprenticeship, stepping out in faith, making mistakes, learning from the master. So let me ask you, have you thought about your faith as apprenticeship? Are you spending time with Jesus daily, learning from his word, practicing what he's teaching you? Even asking, God, what do you want me to learn from this? So I want to give you some maybe simple exercises that maybe help. The first thing I want to say, take 5 minutes to sit quietly and ask, Jesus, what are you teaching me right now? And then write it down. And then ask yourself, how can I put this into practice today? It might be something as simple as showing kindness to a coworker or taking time to pray for someone in need. Apprenticeship happens in the little moments every day. So now, that we've talked about what it means to be an apprentice, let's dive into the first area of RPM, and that's renewal. Because here's the truth. Before we can live out our purpose or step into God's mission, we need to be renewed by Him. And that starts with abiding in His presence.